Why do people take drugs? Hi, it's Roger McDonald from Positive Emotional Healing. Why do people take drugs? Let's look at all the range of drugs: heroin, meth, weed, even legal drugs like Oxycontin, I think, or Oxycontin. Drugs like that, which really do kind of make people feel better. Well, I'm going to tell you why. Remember I talked about in previous videos, or if this is your first video, welcome. We've got two selves. We've got our animal self with a lower S, which is our animal instinctual self. This is the self which most people identify as being. It's the survive, fight, flee, freeze, reproduce part of ourself. You know, the you that's out in the world dodging traffic, getting angry at people in traffic, competing at work, striving to get what you want, to get yours, to get your money, get your food, look after your family, protect your family, get your investment property, get the best car, be big and famous and be a celebrity. That's the animal self with a lower s, a small s, lowercase s. That's that part of yourself. So the thing with that, the animal self, is that it can get stressed. It can get. Hold a second. We'll start with the animal self. I just want to flip over to the divine self, your higher self, your real self. This is the real self of actually who you are. Spiritual self with a capital S. So your spiritual self with a capital SELF. That's the other part of who you are. That's the part of you which is connected to God. In some sense, it's connected to God. If you're a Christian, it's your soul. If you're a Buddhist, it's your spiritual nature, and so on. If you're a New Ager, it's your higher self. Yourself, your spiritual self. Now that, I would argue, is the core of who you actually really are. Now, going back to these two selves, we've got this spiritual highest divine self, and you and I, we've got this animal lower self with a lower case s. These two are constantly in tension. For most people, the lower animal self is governing their life, their choices, their decision making, how they are. The problem with the animal self, it gets stressed. It can get bogged down in anger. Like, anger is an emotion where you sort of fight for what's yours. You set boundaries with other people. It can get bogged down in grief, where there's this fear of loss, or this agony, this sadness over having lost something material, or lost someone you love. It can get caught up in pride, which is wanting to be the best, wanting to have the most, wanting to crush your opposition, wanting to dominate, wanting to fight and win battles, to win wars. The animal self, can also get involved in, what else can the animal self get involved? Obviously competition, jealousy. You can be jealous of what someone else has got. I think, I want that, I deserve that, that should be mine, I should have that, they don't deserve it. Guilt is a big one of the animal self. It's where you maybe perceive you've done wrong, and the part of you says, oh, you're feeling guilty about that, and you're regretting that mistake. Apathy is like where you actually don't care. Doubt, where you're like doubting yourself, whether you'll be able to go after what you want. Can you get it? Can I win it? Can I do it? Can I achieve it? Judgment, judging others. Positionality and duality is part of the animal, the ego, the animal self, where you're judging. You're going, is that safe? Is that person safe? Is that person good? Can I trust that person? Is that car going to cut me off in traffic? That's all the animal self. Now, what can happen with the animal self is when people get too involved with the animal self, and because the world, if you're around thousands, hundreds, thousands, millions of people who are all led and governed by the animal self, life can get pretty hectic and competitive and tough, and it can be kind of a struggle, and people get stressed. And when people get stressed, they get caught down in the lower emotions of the animal self, like grief and anger, jealousy, pride, judgment, anxiety, regret, guilt, apathy, doubt, fear, you name it. It's all in there. And how can they escape? How can they escape those negative lower feelings of the animal self? Drugs. And what happens with drugs? Like I talked about, prescription medication like Oxycontin, with weed, with heroin, with cocaine, with meth. It all shuts down the animal self for a brief period of time, and in that time when the animal self is neutral, when it's been subdued, when it's been pushed right down and repressed through drugs, then automatically you switch to the emotions of the higher divine spiritual self is what you are. So you automatically switch over to peace, to unconditional love, to compassion, to care, to joy. You automatically switch over to those great emotions because temporarily, due to drugs, you've suppressed the negative survival feelings of the animal self. And so drugs, to varying degrees, could be enjoyable in some circumstance. Perhaps if you grew your own drugs. I'm definitely not a proponent. I don't take drugs myself. But for those people of you who do, it can be a huge monetary cost, and that's what can happen when people get addicted. When people get addicted to suppressing the animal self and shutting down the animal self in order to switch over to the higher emotions of their higher divine, supreme, ultimate spiritual self, it can cost money. So people can actually get involved in stealing and theft and illegal activities, all to foster that habit of taking drugs in order to suppress their animal self, the stress, the negative survival emotions of the animal self. A far easier way would be to develop your spiritual self, to develop your decision making and your focus on your spiritual self, which is why like born again Christians, they can have an experience of some kind of spiritual encounter which can flip the switch. It can briefly, they can be switched over to the unconditional love and compassion of Jesus Christ, and in that moment they feel forgiven, they feel the grace and love of Christ, and temporarily their animal self is suppressed. And so too other people who have spiritual experiences with meditation and prayer and praise and worship in different religions, is that temporarily it shuts down the negative emotions of the animal self. And because you're focused on the dictates of the spiritual self, the values of your spiritual, higher, divine, supreme self, you have neutralized the animal in you, the animal self, hence you have no need for the drugs, because it can be free. Meditation is free, prayer is free, praise and worship is free. It's free. So you're not having a financial cost in order to feel good by choosing to align yourself, choosing to spend time in meditation, choosing to pray, and choosing to use those tools and techniques and that focus and that vision to suppress the needy, competitive, stressful desires of your animal self, your ego. Thus, in conclusion, why do people take drugs? People take drugs to suppress the stress, the struggle, the negative survival emotions of their animal self with a lower s, small s, SELF. They take drugs to suppress that, the negativity, the stress, the self-doubt, the fear, the anger, the guilt, the judgment, the anxiety, and so on. Because temporarily that meth, that heroin, that cocaine, that weed, or that alcohol, even smoking, cigarettes, suppresses the animal self. It pushes it down, calms it down, and sort of puts it in the timeout, in the naughty corner, puts it in timeout. And immediately the person switches over to those great, wonderful, open feelings, those higher feelings of the supreme spiritual higher self that we've all got, our soul, where we feel good, we feel compassion, feel unconditional love, we feel peace, and we feel oneness. We feel that oneness with everyone and everything. I'm sure you felt that. If you've ever been on a high, you felt that oneness with other human beings for a brief period of time. And that's what drugs does. It switches people over. It's a artificial means to switch people over to the spiritual self. There are even legal drugs like ayahuasca and other stuff which people do pay and go on retreats to use that in different countries of the world. So that's what it's about. But I guess my point here is that if you can choose to make the decision to meditate, if you can choose to work on yourself and grow, if you can choose to find prayer, whatever you choose to do to silence the animal self and to bring your attention, your focus, your vision, your values onto your spiritual self with a capital SELF, you're going to be much happier. It's going to be more viable long term because it's free. It doesn't cost anything to meditate or pray. Just learn how to do it. Get in the habit of doing it. You're going to live hopefully live longer. You're going to be happier. You're going to save a lot of money. And life is just going to be great. This is Roger McDonald from Positive Emotional Healing. Please check out our website, www.positiveemotionalhealing.com, and our Facebook page, Positive Emotional Healing. Please like and subscribe. If consider liking and subscribing and sharing this with someone who you think might benefit from it. Have a fantastic day. Thank you again.